In this video, I'm going to show you the top 5 most common questions that come up in pharmacy technician interviews, and I'm going to help you plan and prepare some really great answers that are going to give you a greater chance of getting the job. So let's look at one question that comes up very frequently, which is how would you deal with an angry customer in the pharmacy? And unfortunately, this is something that pharmacy workers have to deal with regularly, and so they often ask this question to ensure that you know what you're doing. And it's not the easiest question to think up on the spot. People often go in the wrong direction. So I'm going to show you how you can answer this with the keywords that score well. So let's start with the first idea. So the first thing you say is that you avoid provoking anyone and that you're going to stay calm. So you're not going to make the situation worse. That's the first thing they want to hear, is you're not going to do the wrong thing. So be clear about staying calm, that you're not going to provoke, you're not going to raise your voice, you're not going to argue back. That's the wrong thing to do. The next thing you say is you're going to listen to the customer. So if a customer is angry, you want to be figuring out, why are they angry? What is the issue here? What is the problem? What can you do about that? How can you diffuse the situation? So listening is a very important part of that. Quite often, the anger may present itself really as a desire to finally be listened to. They've got a problem. They don't feel that it's being taken seriously. And by showing that you're listening, that can often basically get rid of the anger to a large extent and calm the situation down. The next word you use is you say that you de-escalate, that you're getting the situation under control, you're taking the lead in controlling the situation, calming everything down, and moving in the right direction. Then you say to reassure them that you will always follow any laws and any policies. If a customer is angry and is demanding a certain medication for which they don't have a prescription, or their prescription is for something different, but they want a particular medicine, you can't just make it up yourself. You have to follow what the laws are, and you have to follow the policies that the company and pharmacy has laid down. You can't just make up your own ones. So reassure them that you will always follow the appropriate laws and the company's policies in all interactions with customers. And then lastly, you say that you are looking to solve the customer's problem and that it's very important to you to keep everyone safe. So once you go through each thing on this ladder here and you mention a little bit about each, you actually have a really good answer to this, and you can talk at length about it and reassure them that you're going to do the right thing. And that's how you answer this question. Let's move on to another question that's really important, which is tell me about yourself. And quite often towards the beginning of the interview, they may just ask a very open-ended question to let you take the lead and present what you want about yourself. And people often waste this opportunity. They go talking about their school life and their childhood, and that's not relevant. Don't do that. Focus around 3 key areas. Firstly, show your experience. They want to hire someone with good experience. You want to show off all the experience you have, whether this is your first role as a trainee pharmacy technician or whether you're a super experienced pharmacy technician. They want to see people that have some experience with customers, ideally some experience in a pharmacy, and you want to show off as much as you have to offer. Then you match the qualities. So you think about what skills and personal qualities pharmacy technicians should have, and you want to say those sort of things. And I'll give you lots of ideas of things you could talk about. And then you want to demonstrate motivation. So towards the end of the answer, you want to explain why you've applied for this job and why this job is a good match for you. That's the last thing that you do in the last few seconds of the answer. So for the experience, think about all your relevant experience. Obviously, you want to focus on any work in pharmacies or as a pharmacy technician. That's going to be the focus of your answer, unless you're applying for a trainee pharmacy technician role, in which case you're going to be focusing on all the skills that you gained from your previous experience and showing how it matches with the pharmacy technician role. You want to be showing off any qualifications you have, even if that's just English and maths. They are very important qualifications. Science qualifications, very important. And ideally, if you're applying as an experienced pharmacy technician, you'll have certifications in that area. And it's always a good idea to bring your qualifications to interview so that they can scan those and verify it. And they know that they've got someone who has got the qualifications that match the job description. Then when you're talking about your experience, don't just say what the job was. Say what sort of experience and what skills you got from that. Even if you'd worked in a restaurant, for example, you'll talk about customer service, dealing with customer complaints, All of those sort of things that you do interacting with the general public, these are good skills, good experience, and you can talk about that. So really get the most out of your experience. Then think about the qualities, personal qualities that are important to the company and important to being good as a pharmacy technician. And let's look at some of the things you can say. So you're knowledgeable. If you've done this role for a long time, you've got qualifications, you can say that you're highly knowledgeable about medications and policies and procedures and laws that you need to follow in the role as a pharmacy technician. You're going to follow those regulations that you're so knowledgeable about. Then you could say you're very caring. When people are coming into a pharmacy, they're obviously got something wrong with them. They've got a medical condition that needs treating, and they want to deal with caring people. And that's a good skill to have. You've got to be very well organized. It's not acceptable to make mistakes and give people the wrong medication. You've got to be organized, and you've got to be keeping on top of exactly what you're doing. And then you also say you're always professional. This is a very important job to get right. You are a trusted member of the community. You are someone that is responsible for a part of people's medication, and you must be someone that they've got confidence in. If you're not being a professional, it makes people question whether this pharmacy is reputable, and that could do huge damage to the organization. So it's essential that you mention that you're a highly professional person. Then for the motivation, you could talk about how you really enjoy working with customers, because that's going to be part of your role. You could talk about how you really like the fact that you improve people's quality of life and you can contribute to improving the health of the population as part of the big care and medical community. You're providing a very essential service. It's very important for health and well-being that good pharmacy services are available. And then if you've got experience working in a pharmacy, don't forget to say that this is something that you enjoy. Make it clear that you like working in a pharmacy. If you're looking to just join a pharmacy for the first time, talk about what you think you'll enjoy about working in a pharmacy. And you see, if you follow this, you get such a good answer to tell me about yourself. And this is one you definitely want to spend a little bit of time planning out and have some bullet points. You don't have to sit and memorize an answer, but have a rough idea of the things that you want to mention, and you'll have a great answer. Let's move on to the next question, which is, what is your greatest weakness? And I've underlined the word greatest. So they don't want to hear a little weakness that's not a big deal. They want to hear something that is an actual weakness. So let's look at the key ideas that you want to get in your answer. So the first thing is, pick a genuine weakness, something that is actually a weakness. So you might want to say something like, my biggest weakness is that I am a perfectionist. Well, do you really want to say something like that? Not really. That's not a good weakness. A lot of people are tempted to try and pass off a fake weakness, but it just shows that you can't actually reflect on your strengths and weaknesses, and it's a terrible answer. The next thing you do is do something to try and fix it. Think about how you're going to overcome this weakness and spend more time talking about what you're doing to basically get rid of this weakness than why this is such an awful and debilitating weakness. But the most important thing is it should not at all be important for a pharmacy technician job. So make sure it's something that isn't actually that important. And then you could talk about training, mentoring, and CPD as ways to get over it. And you want to avoid saying anything, that's really important, like I'm very disorganized and sometimes mix up medications. You've got to have a weakness that is not relevant to the job. So some ideas, some possible ones you might talk about is spelling. If that's very complicated words, you can say that you're good at spelling pharmacy type words because you use them a lot, but more general spelling, you maybe find that a little bit more difficult because you're not probably going to be writing huge long letters and essays, so it's not that important. You may say, if you're applying in an area where there's majority English speaking, that you don't speak any foreign languages, or you're not very good at a second language, and that's something you would like to work on because you think it's important, and then you would like to in the future start learning another language. Delegation, as a pharmacy technician, that's not going to be a huge part of your role. You're not going to be responsible for lots of delegation. Or if you tend to take on too much, you tend to say yes to this, and you ought to take on as much as possible, and sometimes a little bit too much, and you ought to learn to say no. These are things that you could talk about. So that's how you answer what is your greatest weakness. Let's move on to another one, which is, why do you want to be So that's if you're planning on becoming one for the first time, you're applying for traineeship, or why did you become a pharmacy technician, thinking back to originally why you got into this job. Regardless of which of these they actually ask, and it'll depend on what your experience is, they can be answered in much the same way. And it's a good idea just to be ready for it and be really enthusiastic in talking about it. So the first thing that you want to think about is, why would you or do you enjoy being a pharmacy tech? So imagine that either you're applying for it the first time or you're experienced and you're always thinking about what things are great about the job. Do you really like working with medications? You're really interested in that. You've got an interest in pharmacology. You like the in-store environment. You like interacting with the public. You like solving people's problems and providing good quality care. You could talk about all those as things that you enjoy. Then think about a match for your skills. Obviously, if you're an experienced pharmacy technician, talk about how you've got really great knowledge in that area, and that's something that you're very passionate about and you really genuinely are interested in that. Or if you're just applying for this as a traineeship, talk about how you really look forward to learning more about medications, that you're good at customer service, you're good at working with other people, you work well in a team, and that's going to be a good match for your skills. Then think about your interest in healthcare. Be very clear that you've got a passion there. You could talk about training and development opportunities. So as a pharmacy technician, there's going to be lots of opportunities to train, to develop more specialism and take part in lots of continuing professional development. That's something that you might enjoy. And obviously, when you're answering this, show some enthusiasm. Don't be really bland and boring, because it suggests that maybe you're not actually that interested in pharmacy technicians role and you're just doing it to get a paycheck. You ought to show some enthusiasm that genuinely this is something that you are passionate about, because it's your profession. Some other ideas, what you could talk about is, if you see yourself working as a pharmacy technician for a long time, it's a good, stable career, you could talk about it in those terms. If you really enjoy helping others, that's something to mention. Definitely make a big point about talking about your interest in pharmacology. If you know someone that works at this particular pharmacy or this particular pharmacy chain that suggested that you apply, you don't have to name them, but you could talk about the positive things that they have told you about the pharmacy and share in their enthusiasm. There's obviously a big social importance in having good pharmacy services, and you could talk about how you're contributing to your community and society, and then definitely talk up the positives of the employer that you're applying to. Why do you think they are a good person and a good company to work for? And this is how you answer this question. Let's move on to the next one, which is a slightly tricky question if you've not actually planned it. Sometimes they ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? And really, this is a screening question. They want people who match with their vision for 5 years' time, and they're trying to identify perhaps people that are not going to stick around or are just going to be here for 2 minutes, because it's going to be a pain to have to recruit again. So let's look at things not to say and things that you should say. So firstly, don't talk about anything that's irrelevant. Don't talk about buying a second home in 5 years' time, or that you want to move closer to your parents or things like that. That's not a good thing to say. Don't have an answer that doesn't involve you learning and becoming better at your job. And then definitely don't give the idea that you are planning on quitting this kind of area, that you don't want to be a pharmacy technician in 5 years, unless you're saying that you're planning to become a pharmacist or something sensible that is a progression, but within the same company, and you could be giving the idea that you're doing that with the company, then that's okay. But the time to talk about leaving your job is not in the interview to get that job. So never mention or even go anywhere near that. A good answer has 3 basic elements. The first thing is, it's sensible. So if you say a ridiculous 5-year plan, it's going to make you look like a not very sensible person. It has to be focused on development. So spend most of your time talking about what you're going to learn, how you're going to get better at your job. And I'll give you some ideas of things that you can say. And then have a basic plan. I would just sketch it out, just 3 or 4 bullet points about what you want to achieve in 5 years' time. So some ideas. You could talk about one level up. So look at the organization. What's the next step for a pharmacy technician? If you're applying to one single pharmacy, there might not be great scope for you to move up. If you're applying to a big chain, there will be other roles that you could in the longer term move into. One level is reasonable in 5 years. You could talk about being a really outstanding pharmacy technician and developing to be even better at your job. That's perfectly reasonable. Don't have to be going up the way. You can just be brilliant at your job. You could talk about taking on a little bit more. I'll give you some ideas of things you can mention. And the big idea you want to get through your answer is that in 5 years' time, you're going to be better at your job than you are now. You're very good at it now, but you're always striving to be even better. Things you could say is that in 5 years' time, you want to be actively involved in training new staff. You want to maybe take on a little bit more of a leadership role. That could be as a pharmacy technician, but maybe leading on that or taking on a little bit of managerial responsibility. That's something you see yourself in 5 years' time. You could talk about developing additional specialism that you're really interested in oncology, that's cancer medicines, or you want to learn about some other aspect and you want to do some courses and some training in the long term to really get a lot of knowledge in that particular specialism. You could link to the community that you are working in and why that's important to that community. You could talk about wanting to be a pharmacy assessor in 5 years' time. So still working in this particular pharmacy, but you're really passionate about new pharmacy technicians and helping them develop. That's another perfectly reasonable thing to say. And you may also talk about additional qualifications. So research what qualifications in CPD you could do and link that to your 5-year plan. It's all about being better at your job. And if you make that a big part of your 5-year plan, you're going to have a really good answer. So plan an answer around what I've suggested here and you have a great answer. Before we finish, here's some extra questions that you could ask them. At the end of the interview, they may ask, do you have any questions for us? And you definitely don't want to say, no, I have no questions. That's terrible. Have some questions ready. So you might want to ask about the CPD opportunities that your pharmacy offers. Definitely ask that. That's suggesting that you really care about development and being up to date with your knowledge. You may want to ask about the training program that you would participate in when you start with this company, particularly if you're applying for a traineeship. You could ask what a new pharmacy tech should do to be really prepared for starting on day one. What sort of things would you suggest that I learn? And you can make a commitment there and then to do what they suggest. You may also ask what makes an outstanding pharmacy technician in your eyes. And then when they say the sort of things that they think good pharmacy technicians have as characteristics or as skills, you can link that to your experience and your personal qualities and engage in a discussion about why you are well suited for this job. And then one you want to try and make up on the day. Definitely don't ask about pay. You should figure that out before the interview or discuss it after they've decided that they want you. Don't try and negotiate your salary, and don't ask about holiday pay or holidays or anything like that in the interview. It's very negative and it will really harm your chance of getting the job. So I wish you the best of luck in your pharmacy technician interview. I hope you get the job. I'd appreciate if you could post in the comments what questions you were asked to build up a bank of knowledge of the questions that come up, and also like and subscribe if you found this video useful. And finally, thank you very much for watching.